So this is actually a 2019-2020 Specialized Stumpjumper, and this is the S-Works frame. It is one of the best looking frames I have ever seen. So this is going to be my bike build. I honestly didn't think I'd ever do a full bike build unless I was working in a shop, but I was kind of pushed into it. So back in 2019, when we moved out here, I ended up working as a bike mechanic at a shop because they were just absolutely slammed during COVID in 2020. And I thought it'd be a good chance to help out a bike shop in the community and get to know some of the local riders, which it did. But one of the other benefits of working at a bike shop is that you're able to get super good deals on components, full bikes, frames, forks, whatever. It's just part of the benefit of not making a lot of money as a bike mechanic. And at that time, you just couldn't order anything, and anything that was ordered or was in stock was getting sold almost immediately. It was such a crazy time. I ended up not getting a thing, and I was just scrounging up things I could find to upgrade the bike I had to try and make the most of it while I could. So the things I updated on my old bike was the front fork, where I got that from a friend. I upgraded the wheel set to be a full carbon WR1 agent wheels, and obviously the tires and a few other things like the dropper post as well was all upgraded on that bike, but I kept all the old stuff around. So I have all this stuff that I can build up that old bike with, and I wanted to transfer a lot of that great componentry over to this kind of build. Yeah, so another question you might have is, why would you invest in a 27.5-inch frame in 2023? And the reason is I have 27.5-inch wheels on the last bike. I don't really care if I ride 27.5 or 29s. I'm not competing in enduros or anything crazy. I just want a bike that suits me, is fun, will get me up and get me down safely. There's a reason there was a debate in 2020, 2019, and why companies were still putting out 27.5s. I believe this will be one of the very last amazing 27.5 bikes out there, unless you're getting mullet bikes, or if you're a small rider riding a 27.5. But I'm just so excited to have this bike. And one of the reasons I got a crazy good deal on it was because it was a 27.5 XL frame. Those aren't selling really well now. Everybody wants a 29er or a mullet setup where you got a 29, 27.5 on the back. The history of the Stumpjumper and that bike is just absolutely incredible. The fact that it came out in like 1981 and it was just built into like one of the first true mountain bikes that people were getting like super stoked to buy before my time, born in '85, but still a really cool history. So it's always been kind of a go-to bike. And so this is actually a 2019-2020 Specialized Stumpjumper, and this is the S-Works frame, which is ballin'. It is one of the best looking frames I have ever seen. It's got a carbon inlay that I don't know where this frame came from, but I've never seen it like this before. It's got this really, really cool look to it where if the light hits it just right, it looks absolutely stunning. So I am thrilled to have this bike. I love the super stealth look. I feel like if I'm not sponsored, if I'm not making money, I don't want to be advertising too many things. So having this like super stealthy Stumpjumper and super stealthy S-Works on the bottom, the rest of it being completely blacked out and clean, is just phenomenal. Yeah, so you might be asking, like, is it worth going with the traditional build where you're building up from a frame, or buying a new bike? So if you're somebody that's in the market like I kind of was for a new bike, would you build up one or would you just buy one? I'd say for most people, just buy one. You're not going to save the money by building it up. When bike manufacturers are building up their bikes because they're buying a lot of the componentry in bulk. They get deals on it. Even with their profit margins, they are saving you money that way. So for me, this just made sense, and I was kind of pushed into it because I had so many upgrades on the last bike. I can move those over and transfer the original OEM components to that bike again. So if you are a bike mechanic and you work at a shop, 100% go for it. You'll save money on the componentry and the frame and everything, so good on you, go for it. If you're an amateur mechanic like I am, where you have a number of tools and everything in your shop, then, and you feel confident in putting a whole bike together, you've done it a few times, then go for it, but it's not going to save you money. It's got to be a labor of love, and this definitely will be. So I have the opportunity to run a shorter stem, so I think I'm going to run like a 42 or even a 30 mil stem on it to get it right tight, and then run a little wider bar. So right now I'm running 770. I'll try 800. You can always cut them down, but I'll do that. The big difference for me is that I've kind of always had a 10 mil rise on my last few bikes for the bars, just because they've been more cross-country orientated. This, with that extra reach, will allow me to have like a 35 mil riser on it. And then when you're tilting it or twisting it back and forth to get it to the right settings, you have a lot more range to figure out exactly what works for you. And there's a lot bigger difference when you're adjusting that bar and the stem. So that'll be really fun. It'll also get me a little higher, which will be a lot better on the downs. Putting in my Suntour fork on there with my WR1 Agent wheels. That fork is adjustable between 150, 160, and 170 mils of travel. So right now it's set to 150. I might bump it up to 160 or 170 just because it can, but we'll see how it rides. I'll be able to play around with that and see which one I prefer. And I'll probably make videos on that. Brakes, I'm actually looking at getting Shimano Saints on it, which are their downhill brakes, but I love the look of them. I don't think you can ever have too much braking power. So I'm looking forward to kind of throwing those on there. I'm going to be transferring my dropper post from the last bike to this one. This is just the one that's going to be going on the optic, but transferring that here, it did require a shim because there's some tracks I've been on now, like the one at Revelstoke, where you take a gondola up, then you ride up another 500 meters elevation, and then you ride for like 30 kilometers or 20 kilometers or whatever it is down this big flowy run, and it just burnt out my last brakes. Given that those were, 2-piston, I'm obviously going to upgrade to 4-piston, and once I started looking at the SLX, I want to stick with Shimano because I'm just comfortable with it, but when I started looking at the SLX or the XT Dior and the Saints, it basically came down to looks. Saints actually look way better. They're more of an aluminum build, or aluminum and steel build, and they look so good. So I don't think the actual stopping power is much different. That more depends on the material you're using in the brake pads, so whether it's the resin or the metallic brake pads, and also how you're cooling them, and if they have that ice technology, and the rotors, right? Are you running 180, 200? That's what really affects it. So Saint, SLX, Dior XT, I think they're all pretty much the same. So I'm gonna go with the ones that look the best and are kind of ballin' and really unique. I wanna have that on this bike. I want it to be mine. I want it to be exactly what I wanted out of it. As I go to the drivetrain here, that's an opportunity for me to upgrade from the 11 speed in the last bike to a 12-speed drivetrain, and that gives me a lot of options now. The drivetrains are so good, and I'm really looking forward to having some decent climbing gears. You can obviously go with the SRAM GX is what I had in the last one. It's been bulletproof, or I can try something new. I know that Shimano makes amazing drivetrains with their XT lineup, and even TRP now has a drivetrain, and all those. I could even look at electronics, so there's many options, and I'll let you know what I kind of decide on for it. But one of the things about the drivetrain I'm really looking forward to sorting out is the crank arm length. So over the years, I've watched a few videos now where shorter crank arms are just better for a lot of reasons. Because of the more advanced cassette and drivetrains, you do have a larger range of gear ratios. So you can run a smaller crank without worrying about making it harder to pedal because there's such a good gear ratio. So usually I think the last one I had was at least 170, probably 175 if I measured it. And what I'm probably gonna go with on this bike is a 165, but I'm gonna talk to a shop and see what experience they have with it, whether it's 170, 165, or even like a 160. Try and get it real low. As long as I can pedal with it, it's supposed to be a little smoother, and I'm looking forward to that. Probably gonna go with alloy. I keep toying with the idea of carbon crank arms, but any pedal strike just scares me. Although it would look really good on this bike. So we'll see if maybe I can find a deal on some 165 carbon crank arms, then maybe I'd put those on. Otherwise, the rear shock is gonna be something that's really exciting for me. This bike will be a 150, 150, or maybe a 150, 160 travel bike. So that's gonna be a big upgrade from the 120 rear and the 150 front I have on that with that fork. So that'll be a really nice complementary suspension setup. It's gonna be my complete 2020 dream bike. This is the bike I would have absolutely loved to have in 2020, but due to supply chains, it was not happening. So I made the last bike work for a number more years. And I've finally reached a point in my biking ability where I feel like I can move up to a 150, 160 millimeter bike with a little more slack head tube angle and a little more modern geometry to get me to ride terrain that I haven't ridden yet. I've kind of played out and ridden the lines I want to in Cumberland, and I've started riding with some people on the island here and some friends, and they're taking me to more gnarly places with their enduro bikes, and my old optics just, it can do it. I can't with it. So I don't like walking down things. I want to have that confidence again, and I think this bike will provide it. So really pumped. Hopefully you guys enjoy the future videos I make building this guy up. But yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Cheers. You.